Unencumbered by political correctness, undeterred in her mission to spread the truth, unafraid to be a true conservative, she's unapologetic, uncompromising, unwavering, and an undeniably powerful voice when we need it most. This is Rose Unplugged.
Hi, this is Rose. And before we get to my guest, I do want to ask everyone again to please support my sponsors, MyPillow.com, promo code ROSE. And that's where you'll find a lot of great deals with the promo code, sometimes free shipping. And with Christmas around the corner, there's a lot you can purchase for the people that you care about. I'm just going to throw a plug in for the slippers. I love them. I have two pairs, one for outdoors, one for indoors, and they're so comfortable. MyPillow.com, promo code ROSE. Also, Patriot Mobile. If you go to patriotmobile.com/Rose, patriotmobile.com/Rose, you'll get a special deal. You get the first month free. Also, if you're a veteran or first responder, you get some really great deals. And you know, I love that they put their money behind the things that you and I care about. And I know what you and I care about. Because if you're listening to this podcast, we care about the same things. patriotmobile.com/Rose. Also, americansforprosperity.org. They're doing some really great work. Please go to their website and see how you can get involved. There's going to be more information on my sponsors at the end of the podcast, but I am asking that you please consider supporting them because they support this podcast. You know, we invited Fox News legal analyst and best-selling author Greg Jarrett to come on today because we wanted to talk about the meltdown and all of the lawfare that's been waged against President Trump and some of the cases and trials that we're seeing right now that have become really headline news. So welcome to the show, Greg. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you, Rose. Thanks for having me on. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your listeners.
Thank you. The same to you, Greg. Let's start with the killing of Laken Riley and the trial. Back in February this year, Laken Riley, a 22-year-old Augusta University nursing student, was murdered. She was out jogging at the university, and her death, they say, was caused by blunt force trauma, asphyxiation. Now, they all talked about her being a caring daughter, a good friend, and a devout Christian, and you hate to see anything like this happen to anyone. And she just seemed like the sweetest little thing, and yet she's now gone forever. And that's because of a gang member whose name is Jose Ibarra, and they had physical evidence, digital and video evidence to tie him to her death. You know, and the judge did convict him. So we can say thank God for that. But I had a question for you. This wasn't a jury trial. He waived his right to that. Why would someone do that? I've always been curious about that.
Well, I think he knew, his lawyers certainly knew, that a jury would, convict him in a nanosecond. They thought maybe we can snooker the judge. It didn't work. But, this tragedy is the inevitable consequence of Joe Biden's immigration open-door policies, inviting everybody in. 12 million illegal migrants have flowed into the country, and many of them are just like Vara, who, is a career criminal, a violent person, and, thousands of people in America's citizens, have been victimized by these criminals who were here illegally. And in the case of Laken Riley, Joe Biden has blood on his hands. He did that. He made that happen. And he'll never recognize it. And neither will any of the mayors and governors who advocate their sanctuary city status. There are more than 300 cities and counties that have these sanctuary policies. Now, for some, it's simply a progressive political statement. They've taken no real action to give sanctuary to people who are here illegally. Other cities, like San Francisco, actively protect illegal immigrants, and they refuse to turn people over who committed crimes to federal agents for deportation. When ICE asks for a hold on a prisoner, the city ignores it, and they often walk free. And, it's about time that we start enforcing the law. There are two laws here that can be used against sanctuary cities and states. One of them is the Illegal Immigration Reform Act of 1996. It requires states and municipalities to cooperate with federal authorities. If they don't, they lose all federal funding. And if that doesn't work, let's start arresting the mayors and the governors who are concealing, harboring, or shielding from detection these illegal immigrants. And I'm reading directly from a federal felony law, 8 U.S.C. 1324. And if you harbor or shield, as these sanctuary cities and states do, people here illegally, you can spend up to 5 years behind bars. And if somebody dies, like a Laken Riley, it's life behind bars. And, these mayors and governors, particularly I was noticing the governor of Illinois, the mayor of Denver, they say they have vowed to actively stop the Trump administration from arresting people who are here illegally. If they do that, that's also obstruction of justice. They think, they're somehow insulated and protected by their elective status. They are not. George Wallace was nearly arrested in 1963 when he obstructed federal law, and he backed down at the last moment. So governors and mayors can be arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned.
Do you suspect that we'll see some of that coming up?
I do.
I do too.
I wrote several columns about this back in 2016 and 17, urging President Trump to do just what I've described. He didn't do it. I wish he had. But I think he has come to realize, with all of the cases, just like Laken Riley, that we now need to aggressively enforce the law and go after these sanctuary cities and states and the elected officials.
Before I move on because I want to talk about Daniel Penny, and there's just a lot of us have been glued to the TV and we've been listening to find out what's going to happen because these shocked us to our core for different reasons, but they did. And before I do move on, there was something I wanted to ask you because at one point, the defense team argued that, hey, the DNA evidence, that could be his brother, Diego. It might not be him. And it seems like a lot of undermining of the lab results and finding experts who are going to raise doubts about those results. I mean, I thought at one point that you have that DNA and all of the evidence that they had. Is this a new trend or has this been always going on? I mean, you're literally saying it could have been his brother.
Yeah, well, the use of DNA by a defense team came into vogue in the aftermath of the O.J. Simpson team,
yes,
and the success that they had in snookering the jury, which had already, sort of preordained the outcome the moment they were selected. But, you can identify with specificity that it was Ibarra and not his brother Diego. And there was also other corroborating evidence, bloody clothes and so forth. So, that was the longest of long shots for the defense.
Yeah, I'll say. Well, it was a speedy trial, 4 days, strong evidence. So, justice was served here. Now let's move on to Daniel Penny, because we know that this homeless schizophrenic man was on the F train. This was back in 2023, May, I think. And he was looking for food, he said, and he was telling everybody that he's ready to die, not afraid to kill somebody. And the other riders were really afraid, and who wouldn't be, right, on the train. But one of the passengers on that train that day was Daniel Penny, and we know now that he's a former Marine, and he put Neely in a chokehold, I guess they call it, and it lasted 6 minutes. And then Neely was then rushed to the hospital, later declared dead. So now we've got Daniel Penny on trial for protecting passengers from this crazy person on the subway. And they're expecting, I think, closing arguments on Monday on this trial.
Right.
What are you thinking as you're watching all of this unfold?
I expect not guilty verdicts to the two charges against him. They're not murder charges. They're manslaughter, both negligence and reckless conduct. But the law and the facts are on Daniel Penny's side. And I think the defense has really done a stellar job here. The evidence is overwhelming that Jordan Neely threatened to kill passengers, and he made overt menacing acts, such that everybody on the subway car, many of whom testified, believed they were going to die.
Yeah.
And the law says, Rose, that Daniel Penny was entitled to intervene to protect them. The law allows him to use lethal or deadly force because lives were, in his mind and the mind of the passengers, in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. So it's a defense, self-defense case, defense of another, in this case, defense of many others. Subduing the deadly threat the way he did was not unreasonable. It was justified. So, Neely is to blame for his own demise. And the forensic pathologist hired by the defense absolutely demolished the prosecutor's cause of death theory and made the medical examiner, who said he died of a chokehold, look utterly incompetent.
Yeah.
Drugs and a psychotic episode ended Neely's life, according to the defense expert, and in the end, there was really no need for Daniel Penny to take the witness stand because he'd already testified through his videotaped interview with police.
That's right. He went to the precinct right after it happened. I mean, should this have ever really gone to trial, though, Greg? I mean, how is he a defendant? And it seems like, you see this prosecution of somebody like Daniel Penny, and it's so disturbing when you consider that there's been so much leniency toward actual criminals, of recent times in the last couple of years, that I am shocked that it went to trial. Should I be shocked?
It would be shocking to any intelligent, honest, objective, neutral person. But you have to remember that the district attorney in Manhattan is Alvin Bragg.
Yeah.
So common sense and fairness in justice have nothing to do with it. Bragg is more than happy to protect career criminals who victimize innocent civilians because he's a George Soros-funded progressive DA. Although I note recently somebody in his office was victimized, and all of a sudden they're taking it seriously and saying, oh, no bail for this one. Now, this case should never have been brought against Daniel Penny. It was justified, and the evidence from the outset demonstrated that it was. And this was a prosecution, I think, handed down by the district attorney because there were racial elements to it.
Right. Always, yeah.
Alleged victim was black. Daniel Penny is white, and I think that had everything to do with it.
I mean, I hate when I see something like this happen. My heart went out to Penny, and you also think, too, you can't help but think, but seeing someone be prosecuted for this really kind of puts a damper on anyone else who might want to rescue someone else who is in harm's way.
That's a great point, Rose. How many people from now on, when they see individuals being attacked, not just in the subway system, which is a death trap in my judgment in New York City, but out on the streets, they will think twice about defending others who are being beaten or robbed or victimized in other ways. The stabbings, the shootings, murders in New York City are reaching, approximately 300. And, crime is out of control. But, it's almost as if, the district attorney's office is telling people, hey, you're on your own. We're not going to protect you.
Yes.
If you do protect yourselves, we'll come after you with a vengeance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so disturbing on so many levels. Real quick, we only have like 2.5 minutes, but let's talk about our special counsel, U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith. He requested to drop the federal election interference case against Trump. And what you said about this, Greg, is that Americans had final say on Jack Smith's misbegotten Trump persecutions. Can you go through that a little bit? Because I think you're absolutely right. The people spoke.
Yeah, the people did speak, and it's well established a sitting president cannot face prosecution. I'm talking about the Jack Smith case. So, the moment that Trump won, the special counsel's cases were over. They were ended. And look, Smith feared that would happen.
I was going to ask you that. Yep.
He unscrupulously tried to rush the prosecutions before the election. And when he failed at that, then he attempted to harm Trump's chances at the ballot box by releasing to the public damaging documents right before the election. They were one-sided. They were exaggerated. That violated DOJ rules. Smith didn't care. He ignored those rules with impunity. He was out to interfere in the election, and the American people had had enough of this corrupt, crooked lawfare that was used against.
Absolutely.
Rendered their own verdict on November 5th.
You are so right. Greg Jarrett, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I haven't talked to you for a while, so this was great having you on with us today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Sean Hannity Show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right, you know what? That was considered, as he said, by many as lawfare, and it's always wrong, and it's always politically motivated.